The Torch of Dawn, a story inspired by American history. The air in Philadelphia on July 4, 1776, felt charged with a kind of electricity Jonathan Reed had never known. The narrow streets, usually filled with the creaking of carts and the chatter of merchants, were strangely quiet at dawn. It was the kind of quiet that came before a storm, not of thunder, but of history. Jonathan, a young printer with ink-stained fingertips, stepped into his tiny printing shop. His hands trembled slightly as he touched the wooden press. On the table lay the typeset blocks he had spent the entire night arranging. The document before him was unlike any other he had ever printed. Words that challenged an empire, that dared to imagine a world built on the fragile, glowing idea of liberty. It was the Declaration of Independence. He had printed pamphlets, sermons, newspapers, even protest leaflets secretly passed between patriots, but nothing like this. The letters on the page seemed to pulse with life, as though refusing to lie still. We hold these truths to be self-evident. The words echoed in his mind, each one carrying the weight of the people who believed in them. For Jonathan, this was not only about politics, it was personal. His younger sister, Hannah, still slept in the small room above the shop. Ever since their parents died 2 winters ago, he had taken care of her. The British taxes had made everything harder. Ink had doubled in price. Paper had tripled. Many nights he and Hannah had eaten nothing but stale bread. He had watched British soldiers march the streets with their polished boots and cold eyes, and he had wondered how a land so vast could feel so small under the pressure of empire. When the Continental Congress messenger arrived at his door the day before, asking him to print the first copies of the Declaration of Independence, Jonathan felt something ignite inside his chest. It was fear, yes, printing treason could cost him his life, but it was also hope. Perhaps someday children like Hannah would live in a world where the powerful served the people, not the other way around. He lowered the heavy press and pushed with all his strength. The wooden frame groaned. Sweat trickled down his temple. He lifted the press again, and there it was, the first freshly printed page, slightly damp, smelling of metal and resin and revolution. As he set the page aside to dry, Hannah appeared at the doorway, rubbing sleep from her eyes. "Is it done?" she whispered. "Almost," Jonathan said, smiling softly. "Come see." She stepped forward, her bare feet silent on the wooden floor. Her eyes widened as she read the bold title at the top. "In Congress, July 4th, 1776. She touched the page as if it were sacred. "Brother, you're printing freedom." Jonathan's throat tightened. "No," he said gently. "We're all fighting for it. This is just my part." The morning passed in a blur of ink and paper. One by one, the pages stacked higher. Outside, a small crowd began to gather, drawn by rumor and anticipation. People whispered, "Is it true? Are we a free nation now?" Just before noon, a rider from Congress arrived. He dismounted, boots hitting the dirt with a thud, and entered the shop. "Are the copies ready?" he asked. Jonathan handed him the first complete set, tied carefully with twine. The messenger looked at it with a kind of reverence. "These pages may set the world on fire," he said. "My sister says they're printing freedom," Jonathan replied. The man smiled. "She's right." He mounted his horse and rode off toward Independence Hall, where the document would soon be read aloud to the people. Jonathan and Hannah followed the crowd toward the square. People flooded the open space, farmers in worn boots, merchants in dusty coats, apprentices, mothers, children perched on their parents' shoulders. There was fear in their eyes, yes, but excitement too,
a spark ready to burst into flame. When the clerk stood on the platform and unrolled the parchment, a hush fell over the crowd so complete that even the birds seemed to pause mid-flight. The words rang out, strong and steady. When in the course of human events, the declaration washed over the people a tide of courage. Jonathan looked at Hannah. Tears streamed down her cheeks, but she was smiling. "For the first time," she whispered, "this country belongs to us." But the road ahead would not be easy. Within months, the war intensified. Jonathan joined the Continental Army as a field printer, following the troops from camp to camp. He printed orders, battle maps, and letters for soldiers who could not write home. Sometimes he printed names of the fallen. Sometimes he printed messages of hope. Winter at Valley Forge was the hardest. Snow covered everything in a silent, merciless blanket. Jonathan's fingers cracked from cold. Ink froze in its pots. Soldiers wrapped their bleeding feet in rags. Hunger gnawed at everyone. One night, Jonathan found Hannah in the makeshift hospital tent. She had volunteered as a nurse, her young face pale with exhaustion. "You shouldn't be here," he said. "And leave these men alone?" she answered. "I have 2 hands and a heart. That's enough." In that moment, he realized something. Freedom was not a gift given from leaders to people. It was built by ordinary hands, hands that printed, fought, healed, carried, fed, and held steady when the night seemed endless. Spring eventually came. Fresh leaves burst from frozen branches, sunlight warmed the camps, and rumors of French assistance breathed new hope into the weary army. Years later, when the war finally ended and the Treaty of Paris declared the United States a free nation, Jonathan returned to Philadelphia. His shop, though dusty, still stood. He reopened it, printing books and newspapers that spoke of building a new nation, one where the promise of liberty stretched beyond battles and declarations into everyday lives. On the shop wall, framed in simple wood, hung the very first printed page of the Declaration. Hannah insisted on keeping it there. She said, "It reminds us that freedom begins with ideas and people brave enough to print them." Every morning, sunlight touched the frame, turning the words golden. And every morning, he felt the same quiet belief warming his chest. A nation was not built in a moment. It was built again and again, every day, by ordinary people carrying the torch of dawn.